had this stuff off of my list. Fibromyalgia, people who can't raise their arms up, aplastic anemia, ankylosing spondylitis, IBS, chronic fatigue, leaky gut syndrome, spinal stenosis, post-traumatic stress disorder, migraines, depression, lupus, autism, multiple sclerosis, Hashimoto's, brain fog, anxiety, chronic inflammation, and ADHD. I don't even know if you all know what each and every one of those things are, but what I'm going to try to do is to draw a connection and a commonality so that you guys can see that there might very well be a light at the end of the tunnel. The way that I'm able as a chiropractor to deal with all this stuff is I practice from a slightly different perspective than certainly your medical doctors and quite frankly a lot of chiropractors out there. And that is in a model of what's called salutogenesis. That's an approach focusing on factors that support health, that grow health, that optimize health as compared to continually being reactionary. All right, and that's how we promote healing. It's really kind of cool. But it is a different paradigm. So you're going to be getting a lot of information here. I see some people, I see at least one person brought a keyboard, like a laptop, and you're writing on your phones, and you have notebooks out and things like that. The information from this lecture is drawn from a lot of different sources. All right, so I'm going to tell you right off the top here that you will be getting a 19 email sequence from me following up. You can unsubscribe it whenever you want. It's not going to hurt my feelings at all, but it is going to be giving you the information that we're talking about today. So my hope is that you can sit back and relax and just take in some of the information. Now, you're dealing with, like I said, some pretty heavy conditions. Who here is looking for information that can make their life a little better? I mean, so I would assume everybody's arms go up, right? So then the caveat, the follow-up question to that is, assuming we're able to give you some interesting information, who's going to take that and act on it? And that's the big issue, right? Because I can give you all the information in the world, but if you don't change the way that you're doing things today, I think it was Einstein that said doing the same thing and expecting something different is, you know, we'll just say it's not going to work out very well for you. All right, that's a bit of a paraphrase. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk very quickly through just kind of what's going on in the United States of America with regards to our health and chronic issues and autoimmune diseases in specific. We're going to talk about why that is, and then we're going to offer you some steps that you can take on your own as well as some different things that you can do to start reversing the trend. We're going to go through some statistics here, and that'll be a little dry. Autoimmune disorders is a big issue in the United States. There's over 100 different named autoimmune diseases. It affects 50 million people in the United States. And that's a big increase just over the past generation or two, a 300% up increase, and it's much more prevalent in women, unfortunately. And we can look at the crowd here, the demographics, and we can see that that is reflected. And it's a big economic burden on the United States. We spend lots and lots of money on healthcare, and we don't necessarily get the greatest outcomes. This is a book by Don Jackson Nakazawa called The Autoimmune Effect. And I only bring this up here to tell you that autoimmune is a really big issue that we don't hear a lot. Y'all know this because you're here, and a lot of you are dealing with it. But 1 in 69 women below the age of 50 will deal with breast cancer. It's a terrible thing. It gets a lot of press with the race for the cure, the pink outs at athletic games. But it's 1 in 69, while as many as 1 in 9, which is greater than 10% of women in childbearing years, will be diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. So it is a real issue. You guys are not alone. Now, autoimmune diseases, like I said, there's 100 different ones of them that are named. And what I want you to understand is if you just look in green at the different areas that an autoimmune disease will attack. You know, the bones, the muscles, the skin, the lung, the nerves, the GI tract, blood, the brain, and the thyroid. It doesn't really pick and choose. It doesn't leave anything out. But an important question that I have here, because it's so prevalent, and I'll ask for a little feedback if you choose to offer it. What the heck is an autoimmune disease?
Ask that again, please.
What's an autoimmune disease?
White blood cells are attacking the
Yeah, it's like, let's circle the wagons and shoot in, right? So your immune system is supposed to be out there poised to deal with any external threat that happens to get into your environment. An autoimmune disease is a misread, a miscommunication, and your immune system starts attacking itself. Incidentally, what controls the immune system? Yeah. All right, it's got to have a field general, and that's the brain. And so when there's a miscommunication, bad things start to happen. Some of the things that are associated with that, like I said, just some statistics here. Anxiety is a big issue. It affects 40 million adults, 18% of the population. And anxiety is the most common mental illness currently in the US. And it affects 9 million children. Who thinks children have something to be anxious about, or that they should have it? We know that they do, because the statistics are out there, but it's very tragic. Depression, on the other hand, is the #1 disability worldwide. It accounts for 13% of the global disease burden, and it's just expected to grow. And we go back to kids. 1 in 33 and 1 in 8 adolescents. I know some of you are a little bit more senior here and have lived longer than the rest of us. Did you have a lot of depression in your area when you were kids?
Yes.
All the way back then?
Yeah.
Not diagnosed.
You think it's gotten worse, or do you just think it's underdiagnosed?
What back then?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's some truth to that. I think that it's gotten worse in general because of the tone of the world we live in. The impact of chronic illnesses. Now, the top 6 chronic illnesses are listed here in the United States. Cardiovascular disease, cancer, obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, asthma, diabetes, and arthritis. 107 million people have at least one of 6 of those. All right, that's amazing to me. 70% of deaths in the United States are caused by chronic illness. Obviously, cardiovascular disease and cancer are the #1 and #2 leading killers in America. And I just wrote the zeros out to see that's $2.3 million that we throw at that, and we're not getting good results. Our health compared to other westernized countries is not so good. In children, 32 million have at least one of 20 chronic health conditions, which blows my mind. Incidentally, that number jumps to 54% if they're obese. And all you've got to do is go to the mall or go to a football game at the high school, and you can see there's a good deal of obesity. Now let's kind of move into how systems are controlled. I'm sure pretty much all of you drove here tonight, right? Or rode on a vehicle or something. You're all familiar with cars. So what does a car need to function properly? Fuel. I heard somebody else say battery and gas, so that's fuel. Then I think I heard tire and motor, and those are parts, right? Maintenance. Sure. Anything else?
Computer, right?
The computer to run the show that's in there that they plug in to tell you what's wrong with it. Does anybody here have a Tesla or another car like that? So I'm assuming none of your cars like self-drive, right? What else do they need? A driver. They need parts, power, and information. When you think of doctors, you know, if you've gone onto the medical merry-go-round and you're getting a lot of social interaction with physicians, what kind of doctors do we have a lot of? Parts, power, or information? It's parts. You've got an orthopedic that deals with bones. You've got an ENT that deals with your ears, nose, and sinuses. You've got gastroenterologists. You've got OBGYNs. They're part doctors. Not many people focus on nutrition, although thankfully there's a little bit more education and interest in that right now, as it's super important. Who focuses on the information?
I'm a nurse.
Pardon?
I do, I'm a nurse.
You're a nurse. Yeah. I mean, typically, from a medical standpoint, it's going to be your neurologists, right? They're the ones that are focused on the information that's coming in. But it's not really all that covered, and it's super important, as you'll get to know in a little bit. Computer systems work the same way. right? They need parts, power, and information. I'm a Mac guy, I'm an Apple guy, because oftentimes the information on my computer doesn't work properly, so I can go to the Apple store for free, and they will self-diagnose the problem as me, typically, not knowing how to use it. You know, you gotta be able to use it, but it requires the same thing. Now, living systems, when we think about a human, or even plants or something like that, what do they need to be healthy? Water. Parts, power, and information. Right? I mean, we're an animated machine. We function the same way. And, you know, to the extent that you have all your parts, if you lose a part, there's not a lot we can do about it. But we want to make sure that your parts that you have function as well as they can. Same thing with power. You go to Barnes & Noble and you can get super confused if you go into the diet section because there's so much misguided information there. We also need to have the communication and the information system working as well as possible. Now, because systems are made of parts, they're all eventually designed to do what? Any idea? They're gonna break. They're gonna break down. Nothing lasts forever, right? So that's a pretty normal part of a parts lifestyle. And then when you think about it, if you change the parts, power, or information for a plant or any type thing, what you're gonna get is stress to that system until it eventually breaks down. So when you look at a human, what happens if you take away, disturb the parts, power, information of a human being? What you're gonna end, wow, sorry. I jumped ahead faster than I wanted to. You're gonna get stress. It breaks you down. And there are 3 general types of stress, and I don't know if any of you experience them. I experience all of them. One of them is physical stress. That could be from a car accident, a fall, sports injury. It could also be from going to bed, sleeping on a cold pillow, and going like this for 7 hours, putting yourself into a pretzel. It could be having a day job that has you sitting all day when we're designed to move. There's lots of different kinds of physical stress. Then there's chemical stress, a poor diet, environmental issues, medications, drugs, crappy food, the standard American diet. And then there's emotional stress, which is probably the biggest that we just kind of go through. That's your job, your family, your adult parents, your children, your finances, what's going on in the world if you pay attention to it. Those are all types of emotional stress, and that's going to be really important when we get to this next picture here. I call this the gut-brain quadrangle. It was taken from an autism study done originally by an MD named Paul Hardy. And if we look at this from the right to left, this is kind of a foundational slide. So I'm going to spend a bit of time on this. We all, like I said, go through various types of environmental stressors, those physical, chemical, and emotional stresses. I don't know you guys, so I don't know which one of those you go through, but I know that as humanity, we all share the fact that we go through those, and they come into our body. We deal with them, all right? Each one of us is unique genetically, right? That should be pretty obvious. We also have a nervous system, and a GI system, and a detoxification system, and an immune system that helps us to fight those stressors that come in. What do you think happens if our ability to adapt to those stresses is superseded, is gone beyond, so that we can't actually constructively deal with those? Any idea?
Start to break down.
Pardon?
We start to break down.
We start to break down. And if you break down long enough, we start to express symptoms and conditions, which is what you see on the right, different disease presentations. Now, incidentally, do you think that people's systems get overwhelmed more now than they did 50, 60, 70 years ago? Okay. There's lots of reasons for that. I'll just posit one. You know, if somebody has some genetic weaknesses, maybe those weren't such a big issue 50 or 60 years ago when life wasn't so crazy and wasn't so toxic and we ate better and we weren't quite so stressed out. But what's important to understand about this is so important, because let's say that my individual genetics has a weakness towards cancer, towards colon cancer. My father passed from that when he was 43 years old. So I probably have a genetic weakness for it. And let's say that Michelle, who was checking you all in her family, she has a genetic weakness for cardiovascular disease. And you guys have your own genetic weaknesses, whatever they may be. If we experience the same kind of stress, the physical, chemical, and emotional stress, and it overwhelms our system, can you see the potential that we would present differently because of that? That she would probably present more in a heart situation and I would present more in a cancer situation? Does that make sense? Okay, so this is really important because, you know, I know that you said you're a nurse and many of you have dealt with doctors, and I imagine that doctors would treat breast cancer differently than they would treat congestive heart failure. Is that a fair statement? Yeah, of course. But as a vitalist, as somebody that's practicing in that paradigm of salutogenesis, would it make sense that regardless of this, we come over here and try to optimize this and maybe figure out some ways to lower the stress that's going into the system? Okay, so that's why if you're not focused solely on a disease process and the treatment of a particular disease, the treatment for a lot of things can appear to be very similar. That's an important concept that I hope you guys grasp. Incidentally, why is the nervous system at the top of the little diagram in the middle there? It's the conductor. It's what controls how we deal, how we respond to all of that stress that's coming in. And if that brain and nervous system is already in and of itself stressed, it's not going to do as good of a job as it could. All right. So let's talk a little bit about this gut-brain disorder trifecta. So like I said, just from the other chart, we have our genetic predisposition, each of us is unique, and we have the chronic environmental stressors that we're dealing with on an ongoing basis. What that can lead to is a microbiome depletion. All that microbiome, the bacteria, the good bacteria that's in our gut, all right? What's listed up here are a couple of ways that that gut bacteria becomes damaged, becomes lessened, becomes less effective, all right? And we'll talk about these, like a C-section. Why would that damage the gut bacteria of the child that's born via C-section?
Still trauma of some sort.
Well, I mean, it's not the natural way to be born, but that's not necessarily in and of itself going to disrupt its gut biome. Where does it get its gut biome?
The birth canal?
From where?
The birth canal?
The birth canal of the mother, right? Passing it through there. It's kind of icky, but you know, when you're passing through a mother's birth canal, a lot of that stuff's getting in you. And it might be the very most important meal that you ever had as a child. That's where you get your gut bacteria, is from mom. Except when they cut mom in the belly and then swab the heck out of it with antibiotics, it's not passing through the birth canal. You're not getting the benefit of all that. That's why C-section is damaging on a child's gut bacteria. Antibiotics, that should be pretty obvious. If you get strep throat, you take a nice antibiotic for your sore throat, it goes through your body, it attacks bacteria. It'll attack that gut bacteria. Drugs are the same way. Poor diet creates an environment in your gut that is not healthy for the friendly bacteria that we have in there. Chronic stress is a big thing. That wreaks havoc with your gut, and that's going to be a big issue that we talk about going forward. Alcohol. I'm sure a lot of people like alcohol. It's just generally speaking not super great for you. Changes the pH and whatnot in your gut. And then this big one, altered vagal tone. Have any of you guys heard of that before? Of course you have. Well, in about an hour, you're going to have had enough of it. You're going to understand, because that's kind of a key part of the lecture. Left long enough, that can lead to autoimmune reactions, immune sensitivity, allergies, brain inflammation, and multiple pathogens. And so not only does it cause leaky gut, which I've got a little slide on that I think next, but it also perforates what's called the blood-brain barrier. So that kind of stuff can actually get into your brain and start causing dysfunction there and start causing chronic inflammation. We want to take care of that. Now I have a little video. This is kind of fun.
So you think you're human? There's 7 billion people on this planet. You know how many microbes there are? 5 nonillion. 5 nonillion. That's the number of stars in the universe multiplied by 5 million. That's a lot of bacteria. And they're everywhere. They're on this floor, they're in your kitchen sink, they're on your chair, they're on your coffee cup. And yes, they're on you. You harbor 100 trillion bacteria in and on your body right now. That's only 1,000 times the number of individuals on this planet. And if you look at it in terms of cells, you are outnumbered 10 to 1. You are not human. You are a walking bacterial colony.
It's kind of an interesting perspective, isn't it? And they're very, very important for your health, all right? So that's a good thing. When we talk about a leaky gut here, what happens is the lining of your intestines, which is all like little fingers that are in there that increase the surface area of your gut that makes food more available, more surface area to absorb it after it's been digested. You get chronic inflammation in your digestive tract, and that creates little openings that food, prior to being fully digested, can leak out. We don't want that in our body. So what do you think our immune system says to that? Go take care of it, right? We're going to get an inflammatory response. So we get some chronic inflammation in our intestinal tract, and that leads to some perforation, all right? And it's a self-perpetuating type of situation. When we look at foods, because obviously that's the main thing that's passing through our gut, foods that can cause leaky gut. So gluten and most grains. Now I don't think that the majority of the people have a gluten autoimmune disease like celiac, but I do think that a huge number of people suffer some sort of an allergic reaction to gluten, and an allergic reaction causes chronic inflammation. Okay. Sugars and artificial sweeteners. Those get broken down in your gut and they feed what's called yeast. All right. Anybody here have a yeast infection? I mean, they happen in lots of different places in your body, from your mouth all the way down to the end where things are coming out. We don't want that yeast to overgrow because it pushes out the good bacteria. Any idea why conventional meat might cause leaky gut?
The way our body processes it.
The way our bodies process it?
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit, but maybe the way it's grown. I mean, our meat is raised in such unhealthy situations that it's got to have regular antibiotics, and we want it to grow fast. So they give it hormones, and it's full of trash, and all that stuff can have a very negative effect on you. Same thing with conventional dairy, refined vegetable oils. I'm sure that there's a lot of people here that love McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or something like that, and it's good every once in a while. But you're putting a lot of stuff in your body that's wrecking your gut. GMO foods, I think the final analysis is out on those yet. I mean, we're still looking, but obviously when you're messing with something that's very, very natural, you gotta question exactly what you're doing. I think that the wisdom of built vegetables is maybe a little better than our wisdom. And then when you think about, tap water and all the pesticides and things that are in that, does anybody here wear makeup? I mean, you're putting it on the biggest organ in your body, which just absorbs all that stuff. It's probably not the best for you. Same thing with deodorant, you're putting aluminum and other things right down there where it can be absorbed as a heavy metal and cause problems, and those can all affect your gut. Now here are some foods, if you're not eating these, this is one of those steps that you can take to start enhancing your health. Just take it from here. Foods that help a leaky gut. Bone broth. Probably not bone broth from bones from traditionally raised on the big meat packing farm, cows and chickens. But if you can get organic and make your own, it's full of tremendous calcium and bone building type things, and it's an anti-inflammatory, which allows that gut to start to heal. Raw, cultured, organic dairy. Kind of hard to get raw dairy to just drink here in Iowa, unless you have direct access to a dairy farm, which is good for you. But certainly, eating some cottage cheese, some of those hard cheeses that are unpasteurized and things like that, it's going to be really good for you. There's a lot of good nutrients in there. Fermented vegetables. Anybody know what a fermented vegetable is?
Cabbage, kimchi.
Kimchi. Yeah, absolutely. That's got a really strong taste. It's good. But sauerkraut, all right, pickles, that kind of thing. Of course, they're growing in essentially a prebiotic mixture. So there's a lot of bacterial action that's going on in there to actually get them to fermentation. All right, fantastic for you. Sprouted seeds, flax, chia, and hemp. I actually have a book called Sprout, which I got off of Amazon. Sprouts are really easy to do at home. They're super cheap, and it's a superfood. It's absolutely fantastic. Just don't get your alfalfa sprouts from Jimmy John's, or you might get sick. So if you can grow your own, it would be much better. I shouldn't pick on Jimmy John's. I like it. Coconut products, absolutely fantastic. It's a great. This is weird. It's a saturated fat, right? Is saturated fat bad for you?
No.
No, it's not. People say we don't want saturated fat because we don't want that goopy stuff in our arteries. Well, saturated fat means that it's a solid at room temperature. Are you all at room temperature right now, or are you like 25, 30 degrees above that?
Right.
Yeah, it's not a solid in your body, and it's got tons of great properties. Organic and grass-fed beef and lamb. Fantastic for that. You're getting omega-3 fatty acids in a much higher ratio than you would get with traditionally raised protein. All right, and omega-3, everybody knows that we need calcium to have strong bones. We need protein to grow muscles. What does omega-3 fatty acid grow? Or what's it important for? Your heart.
Your brain.
Ding, ding, was that you back there? Gosh, I wish I had a t-shirt I'd throw it to. Yeah, so obviously it's a building block for your nervous system, which is super important. Wild caught salmon, the same thing. Salmon's a great source of omega-3 and good quality omega-6. The problem with salmon that you need to be careful of is the whole farmed salmon thing. They feed salmon corn. That's crazy. They feed cows corn. Cows aren't supposed to eat corn. That's what makes them all fatty. I remember when I was first getting into eating, like grass-fed meat, and I don't like a ribeye. It's too fatty for me. I'm a New York strip kind of guy. So I'd get a grass-fed steak that's New York strip, and I'm like, wow, this thing is really tough. I don't know if I like it very much. It didn't have as much fat, so then I had a grass-fed ribeye. Muy bueno. Had about the same fat content as a New York strip, in a traditional thing, but it's a really good kind of protein and fat. So before we go to the connection here between that nervous system and the brain and the gut, I thought it was important to just give a couple of quick facts about the brain. Like I said, with the omega-3, the brain is 60% fat. It generates 25 watts of power, and it uses 25% of your body's oxygen needs and energy needs. That blew my mind. Do you remember Michael Phelps, the swimmer, the Olympian that's super decorated? Back when he had his killer Olympics, the really good one, maybe 12 or 16 years ago, there was a news story that said he took in 15,000 calories a day. My wife and I are on a weight loss thing right now where we had to eat for 2 days, 5,000 calories a day. We thought we were going to die. It's crazy. It's hard. So this guy is eating all day except the time that he's swimming. So he's got all those calories, 15,000. My math isn't very good, but I think that would be somewhere around like 4,000 calories is going to that boy's brain.
Ooh.
So, I mean, that thing requires some juice to run. It processes approximately 70,000 thoughts per day, and 11 with a lot of zeros of bits of information that's going on. Now, I don't know, do you guys think that you know all of your 70,000 thoughts a day? I mean, I have like ADD. I was driving cross country with my father-in-law, and one time he says, "Jeff, do you have a hearing loss?" And I said, "Why?" "No." He says, "Every time I talk to you, you say, 'Huh? What? Come again?'" And I said, "Oh, that's just my pattern interrupt, because I got all that stuff going on." So about 100 miles later, he said something to me, and I'm like, "What?" He says, "What are you thinking?" And I listed like 7 things to him. And he just looked at me like, "How do you function that way?" But our brain does it all the time, 70,000 thoughts a day. The gut. These are very interesting things. The gut contains, like that fellow on the video said, 100 trillion bacteria of lots of different species, all right? But what's really cool is 90% of your body's serotonin is made in the gut. Does anybody know what serotonin is for? Huh? It's your happy drug, all right? So much so that if you're depressed, they'll put you on an SRI, a serotonin reuptake inhibitor, because they want to make sure that there's more serotonin in your system to lift your mood a little bit. Well, if you have a damaged gut, you're damaging your serotonin production. And get this is pretty germane. 70% of your immune system cells are in your digestive system. It's called your enteric nervous system. Do you think that was important like 5 years ago when the world was crashing down due to COVID? Yeah. They never really talked about how to strengthen yourself naturally, which probably wasn't the end all, but it would have been a good starting point to maximize our body's inborn innate ability to deal with infections, like it has for all of humanity. So lots of stuff with the gut. Now the literal connection between those two is the autonomic nervous system, and we're going to focus on this for the next several minutes. And the big connector is called the vagus nerve. Remember when I mentioned that vagal tone? All right. It is the literal connection. It starts at the base of your skull, at your brainstem called the medulla oblongata, and it goes to your heart, to your lung, to your kidneys, to your spleen, to your stomach, to your pancreas, to your lower digestive area, all the way up and down. All right, and we want to make sure that that's an open line of communication and working the right way. I was here talking for a different group on Monday, and they had a microphone, which was fantastic. And here I am trying to yell at you guys. Hopefully you're hearing everything I say. But if I put a mask on like this, are you going to really hear what's going on super well? Do you think there's a potential that you could misunderstand what I'm saying? Okay, well, we want to make sure that that vagus nerve has an open line of communication because it's so very vital in running your system. Okay?
I went deaf during COVID, and that was the most frustrating thing. And even still, I tell people, I say, I can take 2 steps back, I can take 10 steps back, but if you leave your mask on, I can't have a conversation with you. Like,
I think being deaf would be one of the most terrible things ever. So the autonomic nervous system is designed and divided into 2 halves that do different things. The half on the right here is called the sympathetic nervous system. I'm sure you've heard of it. This is the nervous system that revs you up. All right, it's going to go gangbusters. If you're ever threatened, all right, and we'll talk about what it means in today's society to be threatened. I think that'll surprise you a little bit. And then on the left, we have the parasympathetic part. That's the part of the nervous system that controls rest, repair, and regeneration. Only kind of important if you want to keep living a long life, right? So, a couple studies here. Stress, inflammation, and depression. Basically what this is saying is that when you see a threat, your body goes into a stress response. It creates an inflammatory process, and if left long enough, it will be kind of one of the foundational causes for depression. All right? And what I want to draw your attention to here, highly conserved biological response to adversity. Yeah, sure, that makes a lot of sense, but look at the blue. It can also be activated by modern day social, symbolic, or imagined threats leading to an increasingly pro-inflammatory phenotype. That's just how we express our physiology. That may be a key phenomenon driving depression, as well as conditions like asthma, rheumatoid arthritis, chronic pain, metabolic syndrome, cardiovascular disease, obesity, and neurodegeneration. So when you think about evolution, maybe I go down to the stream in the morning to get myself a little water. I'm parched, I've been sleeping, it's beautiful, it's misty, it's kind of still pre-sunrise, it's pretty. Give a little bit of water. And all of a sudden a saber-toothed tiger jumps out, looks at me. There's some stuff that's gonna happen inside of me to prepare me to run and to escape, right? Well, that's great in the moment, and I'll talk about being stuck in that a little bit later. But understand our kids today, if they post something that they think is really cool on, I don't know, TikTok or something like that, and you know when people like your TikTok videos or your Facebook videos, you know how you get the little ding, ding, ding on your phone? That's like a dopamine hit for these kids, all right? They're getting feel good for that. But let's say that maybe only 4 of their friends give the thumbs up for it, and somebody says it's dumb. I mean, really, that's not very important in the real world, but here's what it does. It does that. All right, that's the whole point of this, that things that shouldn't be stressful are going crazy in our lives right now.
Every notification you get dysregulates you for at least 30 minutes.
Is it 30 minutes? That's amazing. I mean, and then what do we do as soon as we wake up in the morning? We get on our devices. So psychobiotics and the manipulation of gut-brain signals. So several animal studies have found that the vagus nerve mediates the relationship between psychobiotics, that's the bacteria that's in your gut, and the effects therein. And severing that vagus nerve abolishes the response. You lose the benefit of that gut biome that's in there. I don't recommend you get your vagus nerve cut, but what I will tell you, and we're going on, there's a lot of vagal tone, and I call it vagal tone, that's like how it's firing, you know? If it's supposed to fire at a rate like this, and it's only doing this, that's a low vagal tone. That's what I mean by that. So, here's a couple of signs that you might have an autonomic imbalance. Let's start on the high sympathetic side. All right, you can read up here. It can cause DS problems, IBS, poor sleep and insomnia, anxiety, focus issues, neurodevelopmental disorders. When you look on the other side, it can cause depression and constipation and hormonal issues, fibromyalgia, which I know was probably the very biggest thing that people said was a concern for them. Adrenal fatigue, that's interesting. And compromised immune system, among other things. So adrenal fatigue, have you all heard of that? Okay. So your adrenals, they release primarily stress hormones, adrenaline, noradrenaline, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and cortisol. And if you're chronically stressed, your body is always asking for more of those hormones, and your adrenals can get fatigued. Does that make sense? Okay. So if we're stuck in a high sympathetic fight or flight, and we're over here, after a time, could you see how that'll just gravitate over to here? So even if you're stuck in a low or in a high parasympathetic state, predominantly, not always, but for the most part, it's because you've been stuck in high stress and you just can't handle it anymore. You're totally overwhelmed. And your adrenals are just basically blown up. So I want to talk a little bit about this altered vagal tone and how it affects people, because this is going to be, I think, kind of the connector on what we can do to help going forward. It's associated as a predictive risk factor to develop rheumatoid arthritis, an autoimmune disease. It's associated with cardiac autonomic dysfunction in people with lupus, more rheumatoid arthritis, and just increased mortality. It's associated with multiple sclerosis and with Alzheimer's disease and adult onset dementia, which is an increasing problem in today's society. It's also seen in chronic fatigue syndrome, according to a systemic review of the literature, sleep disorders in fibromyalgia patients. And when you stimulate it, which we'll talk about a little later, it improves coordination in chronic diseases like Parkinson's disease, Huntington's chorea, and things like that. So this Journal of Internal Medicine here stated that correction of chronic maladaptive levels of inflation using vagal nerve stimulators might prevent the progression of debilitating and deadly diseases. So what they're saying is they're seeing that there's a correlation in a lot of different disease processes from a malfunctioning or low functioning vagal nerve. Make sense? Now obviously, implanting a vagal stimulator seems to be like a little invasive by default, and there are ways to stimulate that vagus nerve that we're going to get to in a moment here that you can start adding into your daily life. They're also using it for helping lower the incidence of epilepsy, which I think is really cool. I hope none of you have had a seizure. My mom had one coming out of the hospital from when she broke her hip. All of a sudden, driving's off the board. It takes a lot of time for her kids to deal with that. So let's talk about 10 ways to increase your vagal tone. Number one is positive social relationships. We all probably, some of you live in apartments maybe, some of you live in neighborhoods. Do y'all know your neighbors? Like their first and their last name and their kids and where they're going to school and the name of their dogs and all that stuff? I mean, we used to have block parties. We were in a sense of community. Now, you know, maybe you can say hi Larry, or maybe it's like, hey you, because we don't do the community thing anymore. I grew up in this church. I don't go here anymore, but one of the best things about it was freaking potlucks after Sunday, because there was always people that were better cooks than my mom. She's not here. So, but we did life together, much less than we do now. Cold plunging is this new hip thing right now. You can even buy like a cold plunge pool on Amazon for like $119. Cold stimulates your nervous system. You don't really need to buy a $119 cold plunge pool. Just turn the hot water off in your shower for like 30 seconds and see how that goes. It feels very uncomfortable, but at the same time it's kind of refreshing. It really jazzes up that vagal tone. Number 3, I love gargling. Anybody gargle? I have some water I can demonstrate. It's kind of fun. The muscular contraction in the back of your throat, because that's coming right where that vagal nerve is, it stimulates it. So I think that's pretty cool. Singing, chanting, and humming. Somebody asked me to sing like before the lecture started, and I don't think you really know how I sing. That's a pretty risky ask. But have you ever seen like an autistic child kind of sitting, huddled up, rocking and humming? It's an innate thing. Nobody taught them that. It slows down their nervous system. All right, I mean, I can't imagine the speed at which they're processing things with the amount of information that can come in. It's an overload. It's part of the reason that they're socially not necessarily as available as they might otherwise be. Massage and other kinds of touch therapy. You know, whether that be, you know, Reiki, massage. I'm sure there's others that I'm not thinking of, but that's that human touch. It's fantastic. Laughter. I wish I had the video. I wish I could find it. There's James, I think his name was James Coburn. Really gray hair, handsome, tall actor. He might be deceased now. He had a really beautiful, deep voice, not like me. And he did this thing on stage where he pulled out the phone book. And he'd just read like, John Smith. And he'd start chuckling a little bit. And he'd just go down reading names, increasing the amount of laughter that was coming out of him. What do you think happened to the crowd? They're freaking rolling on the floor. I mean, he's got him in the palm of his hand because it's contagious. You know, as a society, we want to laugh. Yoga and Tai Chi and other nice controlled motions that have lots of deep breathing in it, and right there is breathing deeply and slowly. And exercise, fantastic. Get out, walk, do some jumping jacks. You know, if you feel compelled, do some push-ups. Go to CrossFit. I wouldn't do that, but you know, do what you can do. And number 10, chiropractic. This is where I come in. Chiropractic is absolutely fantastic, lowering chronic inflammation, increasing the vagal tone. That's why most of you maybe thought, why is the chiropractor talking about chronic illness? I mean, seriously, don't they just crack backs? Right? But that kind of input into your nervous system has a pretty profound effect neurologically. So just a couple of stories here about chiropractic and vagal tone. A healthy autonomic nervous system balance after the correction of what's called a vertebral subluxation, which I'll get to in a little bit. That was known all the way back in 2009, or some would say that V.J. Palmer knew that back in 1919, when he had a place, like a little hospital, that he had an ambulance bay, and all the sickest of the sickest people came in and got checked over by a team of MDs, and then he treated them, and then when they were well, he sent them away. It's amazing, if you care to research. Neck adjustments have a pro-parasympathetic effect. Once again, moving you away from that fight or flight towards the rest repair part of your nervous system. That's a vagal effect. When you get adjusted, there's a reduction of what's called cytokine secretion. Cytokine is an inflammation marker. All right, if you rolled your ankle, what happens to your ankle? It swells, right? So that's an inflammatory process. So as soon as you roll it, you get those cytokines that are being released and say, hey body, we got a problem here. Let's get some inflammation. Problem is when they're going crazy all the time in the body, and it's like, hey, let's have inflammation everywhere. And we don't want that. Chiropractic reduces that. So I mentioned the term subluxation. A subluxation is basically a misalignment of the spinal cord that negatively affects neurophysiological function. Pretty simple thing. So when you think of the vagus nerve, it's coming off, like I said, at the base of the brain, at the base of the skull, at what's called the brainstem, the medulla oblongata. Incidentally, you'll also notice the red up there. That's your vertebral arteries. You've got your carotids that you can check your pulse with on the front of your neck. The vertebrals are in the back. You can't feel them. They supply about 60% of the blood supply to your brain. Remember, your brain needs 25% of your oxygen and energy. So that is a super movable, unstable area at the top of your neck because you got all the ability to do this happening on your skull and the first two bones in your neck. The rest of the bones farther down your spine, they have a lot more stability. They don't move very much. So that upper neck area is unique, like I said, unstable, and yet at the same time, it's what protects, among other things, where that vagus nerve comes off. So the structure affects function. So if you have this subluxation, if you have this misalignment, that changes the way the information flows. You know, when I did the mouth thing, cover my mouth type things, it creates negative neuroplastic autonomic changes. Basically means it's setting up bad habits in your nervous system. Now, how long have you been a nurse? 25 years. So maybe when you went to nursing school, they said that if there's damaged nervous system, that it really can't repair itself. Was that something that you heard? Maybe I'm a little older than you. I heard that. But
I'm the one that is that way.
is that way? Well, there's been this new thing that's been discovered called neuroplasticity. Now, this doesn't mean that somebody like Christopher Reeve, who had a transection of his spinal cord and became a paraplegic or quadriplegic, I can't remember which, that's going to grow back. But it does mean that, like, let's say you have a stroke or something like that. The brain is adaptable. The brain can rewire. And you can get a lot more function out of that than you ever thought you could. But this subluxation lessens the body's ability to do that. Like I said before, it can decrease the blood flow, and it increases inflammation, and it alters your CFF, your cerebral spinal fluid, which is what bathes your brain, bathes the spinal cord and the nerves in your spine, goes all the way down to your sacrum, and it actually has motion. There's a profession called like sacral release. What's it called? Not sacral occipital technique. Something like craniosacral work. Thank you.
Yeah.
Brain's not going. Fantastic stuff. You know, that's working to increase the flow. What's going on? And a chiropractic adjustment can do, you know, some of that. Now, the way we measure that vagal tone, this is something that should be in every general practitioner's office that is trying to take people from a healthy, you know, from an unhealthy state to a healthy state. We want to measure vagal tone. And we do this in our office to see exactly what's happening with your vagus nerve. And we also measure what's called heart rate variability. That's controlled by the vagus nerve. So when I was talking about the stress response earlier, when like a tiger would jump out, what do you think would happen to your heart rate?
Go up.
It'd go up, right? Of course it would. What would happen to your respirations? Go up, because you need the oxygen and you need a heart to pump, right? Do you want them to go up together, or do you want one to go up and say, hey, where's the other thing? I mean, your heart rate increases and your respiration doesn't increase. You're not going to get the benefit of that, right? You're probably going to pass yourself out. So heart rate variability is how the heart and the respiration are working together, controlled by the autonomic nervous system. Heart rate variability in irritable bowel syndrome. It's showing that there's decreased heart rate variability in IBS, right? A autoimmune disease. Patients with IBS, they experience symptoms that may be the result of changes in that autonomic nervous system. Heart rate variability and psychiatry. Studies indicate that patients with depression and anxiety disorders exhibit abnormally low, abnormal HRV compared to regular things. So I keep trying to draw your attention to the fact that one set of things can cause an effect on a lot of different outcomes. Okay, because like I said, you guys all have different stuff that you're dealing with. Fibromyalgia patients show more heart rate variability aberrances and indices of increased sympathetic activity, which is really weird because like fibromyalgia people, they're like exhausted all the time, right? They don't want to sleep, but they can't, and they're fatigued, and yet their nervous system is thinking it's running, I don't know, a marathon or something. Conclusions: patients suffering from major depressive disorders show profound autonomic dysfunction. And I keep coming back to depression, I know that, and you remember from the very first slide that depression is built on a foundation of chronic inflammation. More inflammation, the more depression you have. So all this stuff that I've shared with you tonight so far, and we're kind of getting onto the downward trend here. Does this sound like a brain problem? Can you see how the brain controls all this stuff? And if it's not working properly, that can lead to these conditions? That's what I want you to understand. Hopefully I've gotten you there. But then the question comes, what does chiropractic have to do with the brain? I thought you guys addressed the spine. I mean, I'm not like knocking on somebody's skull. So this is a lovely research study that was done. Shows the results of this study suggest that chiropractic spinal manipulation, don't particularly like that word, it's an adjustment, but it affects regional cerebral glucose metabolism related to sympathetic relaxation. So you're moving parasympathetic. Glucose, incidentally, is the fuel for your brain. So if we affect that glucose metabolism, which requires 25% of our energy, that's a good thing, significantly. Changes the brain activity by 20%. Adjusting the spine increases brain function. Incidentally, this isn't in the study. Like I said, I have ADD. We already established that the brain controls the immune system, right? Any of you ever heard of AIDS?
Of what?
AIDS? AIDS, the disease, acquired immunodeficiency disease. You don't die of AIDS, you die from cold because your immune system is just totally trashed. So there was a study, and this was done a long time ago, like back in the mid-80s. That hurts to say that was a long time ago. But what they did was they measured T2 cells, which is a kind of natural killer cell in your immune system, all right? And that's what decreases over time as AIDS progresses. That's why you're going to be much more likely to succumb to, a mundane illness. What they showed was, and this is quasi-unethical, but they showed that the patients that didn't get adjustments, their T cells dropped 46% over 6 months. The ones that got adjusted and had AIDS, their T cells went up. I mean, come on, if you're gonna die from an immune deficiency, wouldn't you rather put that farther in the future? From something as simple as somebody thumping on your back? But it affects brain activity, and that's fantastic. I love it. So what causes this thing called a vertebral subluxation? It's a big word. You probably won't remember it, and that's okay. It's caused by stress. Like the same stuff. One of the things that was kind of integral in my growing love of chiropractic is that I decided, I don't know that there's really solid research on this, but this is kind of the way I've lived my life with my kid. If stress, physical, chemical, and emotional stress causes a vertebral subluxation, and stress, physical, chemical, and emotional stress causes all those other disease processes potentially to happen, which one happens first? That. And so if you can fix a subluxation, you kind of allow your body the ability to not progress kind of the way that I was talking about and showing earlier. So with regards to stress, just going to give you a little pop culture here. It's America's #1 health problem. When I talk to you about fight or flight versus the rest, healing, and repair, the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic, it's supposed to be dynamic. You're supposed to move in and out of it. But most of us get stuck in chronic stress. Has anybody ever been cut off on the road by some, dork? What's that do to your physiology? I mean, it wrecks it, right? You're angry. You get into that stress response that I was talking about, and then you go to work. Do you function as well as you should at work? No, because you're still stuck there. Evolutionarily, what we're supposed to do is stop that guy somehow, get out with a baseball bat, and, lay out your frustrations on it. Obviously, we can't do that in modern society, but then you move on, and you get out of stress. But Americans are stuck. About 90% of them are stuck in chronic stress. It's estimated that 75 to 90% of all visits to your primary care physician are for stress-related problems, which could just be back pain, it could be anxiety, it could be difficulty breathing, but like I said, that stress is cumulative and it affects you going forward if it's beyond your body's ability to adapt. These are some of the things that stress causes. Increased cortisol, that's what I talked about with regards to the adrenal fatigue. Increases your heart rate, increases vasoconstriction. That just means it ups your blood pressure so that your body is more efficient at pumping blood to the different parts of your body. It increases your blood sugar levels, it increases your blood lipid levels, including your bad cholesterol, and it increases clotting factors, and it increases protein degradation of muscle, and it increases insulin resistance. Do those seem bad? Yeah, but in the moment, they're great because they allow you to fight. But if you're stuck that way, think about this. We have a huge increase in metabolic syndrome. Diabetes is everywhere, all right? In fight or flight, we have increased clotting factors and bad cholesterol. So bad cholesterol, why would the body say, hey, let's up the bad cholesterol? Because it's bad, right? Why would it do that? Because that's part of the clotting cascade. Evolutionarily, there's a good chance you're going to bleed if you're in a situation that requires you to go into a stressful fight or flight type situation. So the body does that. And then once you get away, the body would lower it and your bad cholesterol would go back down. But ours goes up because we're stuck. All right? All of these things that are great in the short term, they end up being, really some of the things that we as Americans are the very most medicated for. A couple other things here that I won't go through all of them. You know that there's like a ADD, ADHD issue in the schools, right? So if you're in a fight or flight situation, are you going to be able to sit down and read a textbook, or are you going to be looking for threats, looking for escape routes? Well, obviously the latter would make sense, right? So making an assumption that maybe we're stuck in that fight or flight, can you see how that would translate into behavior in a classroom? So what do? Do we help the kids get out of fight or flight? Or do we get them rippling? Yeah, it's crazy. So this is the exam that we do to measure your stress response. It's called the stress response evaluation. All right. Quite frankly, It's really similar to a lie detector test. Lie detector tells if you're lying because your stress metrics go haywire. I will tell you that if you decide to come in and get this, I won't ask you any personal questions. What we do is we put you through 3 stressful situations. Not unsafe situations or anything like that. There's a cognitive little thing, and it's basically just subtraction. There is an emotional component that is some uncomfortable sounds, barking, children crying, that kind of stuff. And then there's a physical challenge, which is really challenging. You just have to breathe. 4 count in, 6 count out, belly breathing. Y'all know what belly breathing is? Who thinks they can breathe with their belly really good?
Can't hear you.
Can you? Can I demo on you?
Women usually do.
Okay, stand on up. Do you mind if I put my hand on your belly? Okay, so take a deep breath in. Let it out. My hand moving, people?
No.
You see her shoulders moving? Do it again. See her chest rising?
Oh, it's here.
Okay, put your hand on me that way. Do you notice my shoulders bunching up or anything like that? Now, I can't do that all the time. I practice it, right? But I don't deep breathe like that all the time. But that's what the test is. And what happens when you deep breathe like that? It moves you away from chronic stress and into parasympathetic healing, rest, and repair. And I didn't mean to pick on you or anything, because
I'm a massage therapist,
Are you?
so I control people's breathing
Yeah.
when I'm working with their muscles and with their nerves.
it makes a great,
Which
it'll make it
I
easier to
probably
release.
can't do it right now just because I'm like obviously in front of
I
a
just
bunch
get
of people
nervous.
I don't know. But I work with people with their breathing so I can get them into that parasympathetic mode.
And
every
see, we
day.
talked about massage therapists being
So.
great just touching, and she's taken it to the next level.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, congratulations. And I did, I put you in a stressful situation.
Right.
And so all of those things that we talked about can happen just like that, as her corticosteroids and her adrenaline and her epinephrine just skyrocket. I'm nervous too, but I practice all the time.
Right.
So how common is this vertebral subluxation? That's a good question to ask, all right? I went the wrong way. So this is just a couple of studies, and these were done on infants, the people who have the least amount of stress, one would think. 1,000 infants were checked within the first month of life, and 80% were found to have had vertebral misalignment of the upper neck. Any idea why that could be? Birth, right? I mean, birth was supposed to be natural, right? But now we like tug and pull, and we use forceps, and we use vacuum extraction, and God forbid we have to do C-section, which used to be to save a life of a mother or a baby, but now is done for convenience. It's like, I'd like to have my baby not on Christmas Day. Can we schedule it for the 21st of December?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't know if it's gonna be ready to go, but we can make it come. So 1,250 infants were evaluated during the first 5 years, and it was found that 90% had suffered birth trauma and strain through the neck and cranial areas, with 10% suffering severe trauma. Just out of frustration, I'm gonna point out the small stuff here. That was 1966.
Oh.
So the birth process, even under optimal controlled conditions, is potentially a traumatic, crippling event for the fetus. Spinal cord and brainstem injuries occur often during the process of birth. Once again, 1969. So, I know you guys aren't kids, so sometimes I wonder about putting these things in, but quite frankly, it's something that everybody needs to know because you all have kids or know kids or love kids, and so it's an important thing to understand. But what's frustrating to me is, number one, why isn't this stuff being seen on a regular basis? Why isn't it documented? Why don't we know this as a general population?
Women's health isn't studied though.
That's true.
And like with that though, I've had 3 unmedicated births with no IVs or epidurals.
Mhm.
And I will say that the birthing process is still stressful from my first, I I took a hypnobirthing class.
Mhm.
So with my first birth, I listened to what the lady said, but that flight or flight instinct kicked in, and I felt like I was in fight the whole time because I've never experienced childbirth.
Mhm.
But by the third time, I got that deep breathing and being able to calm the nervous system down through the deep breaths. Which I would say my third birth was probably the calmest and fastest because I got the breathing right. But with that first breath of experience, you don't exactly know how to breathe or train your breathing. Of course, I took the hypnobirthing class. They said, breathe when the contraction comes and release when the surge ends, you know, but until you experience that, of course, you don't know how to get your breath correct. And it took me 3 times to figure out
Obviously,
how to get the breath correct.
I am not a woman, so I cannot speak from authority on this, but y'all are super special, and you're designed to naturally deal with that. All right, that's the way you were designed. But with regards to the infant that comes out, nobody's checking.
We're only checking the heart rate and making sure the heart rate is.
Absolutely. So with chiropractic, a review of the literature, so that just means they look at lots and lots of different sources. You know, if you grab your medicine from the Hy-Vee pharmacy or whatever, you gotta talk to the pharmacist so they tell you how to not kill yourself taking the medication. It's not like we're dumb, but if you go to read the insert, you gotta put your reading glasses on and read all of the potential side effects. And that's from one drug. So let's say you're taking 4, and they all have this same amount of side effects. But drug A will interact with drug B, and drug B will interact, I mean, it's like, it's math that I can't comprehend. There's a lot of potential interactions there. So there's side effects. Chiropractic doesn't really have any. So, I mean, we see significant improvement in all of this stuff. And I won't read all that to you, but it's a pretty big deal, especially since no chiropractor is really treating any particular disease. All we're doing is trying to enhance your body's ability to constructively deal with those stresses so that you don't get overwhelmed. And we don't do it all. I mean, this young lady here has already shown that she's a great asset to people. If you have serious situational stress, you might need some medication to get you through it. And then you might need therapy and support to remove yourself as best as you can, or to learn some new coping mechanisms to get through it. But the idea is to, you want to be able to deal with the stress that you have to be under on a regular basis. And to the extent that you can control that, the really beautiful thing about human physiology is that we're designed to be healthy, all right? Any of you ever gotten a paper cut on your finger? Do you think it heals faster than somebody with a PhD? No, that's innate driven, all right? So, what, I hope, have you guys heard some good stuff that's actionable tonight?
Yes.
Okay. I'll only remind you of this, I'm not gonna have you raise your hand. I asked you to raise your hand earlier if you find something that's actionable that you decide to actually step into the void and take that action, okay? So when I do these lectures, obviously we have an offer for people. And otherwise, like I said, you're not gonna get a lot of benefit from it. There's some actionable things there that I hope you'll do with diet and some of the lifestyle changes. But we have an offer for you, and it's our day 1 and our day 2. And that includes on day 1, a set of digital x-rays, because I am a chiropractor. I do work on your spine, and I do not have x-ray vision. I don't know what you all bring to the table. And more importantly than that is that SR reading that I talked about. I'm the only guy in the state that has that equipment as far as I know. It could change. But that informs me on how I uniquely approach you. And then of course we'll do a deep consultation because like I said, y'all have brought some heavy things tonight and you're all different, unique, beautiful people, and we need to figure out how to best help you. That would be the end of day 1. We because that information takes me time to digest. And what I'm looking for with that is to see, number one, are you somebody that fits in what I do? Because not everybody does. Some people might be out of my realm. Number two, assuming that you do fit in there, what's the plan for you individually? Okay. On day two, when you come, obviously what we're going to do is go through those exams and show you all the things that are uniquely you and what you brought to the table. And then I'll lay out what I think I can bring to the table to help you and a path to go forward. And then the elephant in the room, we talk finances. We're very clear about that. Nobody has to spend any money going forward, and we're creative in how we deal with our finances because, quite frankly, this is life-saving stuff. And everybody deserves access and affordability. So we do the best that we possibly can to give that to everybody. That usually runs $179. What we do when we do these events right here is we offer it for $79 for an individual. And then if you think that there are people in your family that could benefit from it as well, it's $119. And that doesn't mean bring your spouse, or bring your kid, or bring your grandpa. It means bring as darn many of your family as you think would benefit from it. Because I wouldn't be here tonight at 20 till 8 without having dinner if I didn't think it was important and we were on a mission to share it with people and enhance people's lives. Fair enough? So at this point in time, what I'm hoping that you do and that you're compelled to do is to talk with Michelle and see if there's an opportunity to find out just how much this could possibly change your life by finding a time to schedule yourself and or your loved ones. I'm not going to take questions from up here just in respect of your time. However, I will stick around for as long as is necessary to address anybody's individual questions. So thank you very much for coming tonight, and I hope you got some value.